In the heart of Marseille, one of France's most vibrant yet troubled cities, thousands gathered to pay tribute to a young man whose life was tragically stolen. The occasion was not only a tribute to Mehdi Kessaci, but also a powerful statement against the relentless wave of drug trafficking that has scarred the city and its communities for far too long. This tragic loss has become the symbol of a much larger issue, a problem that has not only taken the life of one man, but continues to claim lives every day in Marseille. The atmosphere in the city was thick with emotion. On the 22nd of November 2025, the streets of Marseille were lined with mourners, each of them carrying the burden of loss, of fear, and of anger. What started as a simple gathering to remember Mehdi Kessaci, murdered in cold blood on November 13, quickly transformed into a call for justice, a call for an end to the violence, and a call for change. The rally was not only about mourning the loss of a beloved brother and son, but also about demanding that those responsible for his death, and countless others like it, be brought to justice. The brutal murder of Mehdi Kessaci by two men on a motorcycle has left the city reeling. The perpetrators are still at large, adding to the fear that already grips many parts of Marseille. But on this day, the streets were not only filled with sorrow, but also with a sense of defiance. The people of Marseille came together to say enough is enough, to stand united against the ever-growing violence, and to honour the memory of a man whose life was taken too soon. The rally, which was held in the very heart of the city, saw an outpouring of support from all walks of life. It wasn't just the residents of Marseille who showed up to pay their respects to Mehdi Kessaci. Political leaders, activists, and even members of the public who had no personal connection to the family but shared in their grief came together in a show of solidarity. They came to stand together against the violence that has plagued the streets of Marseille, a city often caught in the grip of drug-related crimes and gang warfare. Among the attendees, the presence of Mehdi's family members was particularly moving. His brother, Mehdi Kessaci, along with his mother, Wassila Ben Hamdi, led the procession. As they arrived, a hushed silence fell over the crowd. Their faces, marked with grief, were also filled with determination. It was clear that this wasn't just a mourning event for the Kessaci family. It was a demand for justice, a demand for accountability. Mehdi Kessaci, in his address, gave a heart-wrenching speech that echoed the collective pain of all those gathered. Executed in the street in the name of my family, torn apart by grief, he said, his voice trembling with emotion. On behalf of all my loved ones, I want to thank you for being here today. His words, raw and sincere, carried the weight of a community that has endured too much. As he continued, the pain of losing his brother was palpable in his voice. My brother Mehdi was innocent. He was only guilty of being my brother. He was good, upright, sincere. He had his whole life ahead of him, Mehdi said, his voice cracking under the pressure of his grief. His demand for justice was unwavering. I demand justice for Mehdi. I demand justice for Brahim, my other murdered brother. I demand justice for all the victims. I demand safety for my family. The crowd, in response, erupted into chants of justice for Mehdi. The chant wasn't just about one man. It was about every victim who has fallen victim to the violence that has plagued this city for far too long. For the people of Marseille, this was not just a day of mourning, it was a day of action. The crowd stood in solidarity, their voices unified in a single message: justice for Mehdi Kessaci and justice for all the victims of drug-related violence. The energy in the air was palpable. It was a message not only to the authorities, but also to the criminals who continue to operate with impunity in the city. The violence had to end. The city, it seemed, had finally had enough. As the tribute to Mehdi Kessaci unfolded, the sense of grief was mingled with a growing sense of resolve. The political leaders who attended the rally, including the Mayor of Marseille, Benoît Payan, and various prominent figures from the Socialist Party and the Greens, spoke out about the urgent need for change. They all expressed their support for the Kessaci family and condemned the violence that continues to claim lives in the city. Payan, in particular, spoke passionately about the need for the city to confront the issues that have allowed drug trafficking and organised crime to flourish. We will fight this, he declared, his voice resolute. Marseille will not be held hostage by drug traffickers. His words were not just political rhetoric, they were a promise that the city would take action, that the government would make sure that the Kessaci family's grief would not go unanswered, and that the city would no longer tolerate the violence that has become too common in its streets. The rally also saw a powerful moment of reflection as a minute of silence was held in honour of Mehdi and to recognise the victims of drug-related violence. It was a moment where the collective sorrow of the crowd gave way to a shared hope for a better future, one in which the streets of Marseille would be free from the scourge of organised crime and violence. During this silence, the crowd stood still, their hands raised to the sky in a gesture of both remembrance and defiance. The presence of law enforcement at the event, while necessary to ensure the safety of the gathering, was also a stark reminder of the ongoing challenges that Marseille faces. The city, which has long struggled with drug-related violence, has seen little respite from the criminal elements that have entrenched themselves in its neighbourhoods. The presence of these law enforcement officers was a sign that the authorities were taking this issue seriously, but it was also a symbol of how deeply entrenched the problem has become. The tribute to Mehdi Kessaci continued with the laying of flowers and the lighting of candles by political figures and citizens alike. Each gesture was an act of solidarity, a symbol of unity in the face of unimaginable loss. The gathering, once a sombre occasion, had turned into a movement for justice, for peace, and for the safety of future generations. As the tribute came to an end, the words "Justice for Mehdi" were boldly displayed on banners held high by the crowd. It was clear that the fight for justice would not end with this gathering. The people of Marseille, led by the Kessaci family, had found their voice. The city had united in a call for an end to the violence, and it was a call that could not be ignored. In the days and weeks that followed, the rally served as a catalyst for change. The government, the law enforcement agencies, and the citizens of Marseille all began to rally together to demand action. The gathering had shown the world that Marseille would not be a city silenced by fear. It would not be a city that allowed its citizens to live in constant danger. The memory of Mehdi Kessaci, who was taken so tragically and too soon, would serve as a reminder of the cost of inaction. The Kessaci family's grief would not be in vain. Mehdi's name would not be forgotten. It would be carried on by those who stood up that day, by those who marched and chanted for justice, and by those who vowed to make Marseille a city where no more lives would be taken by the violence that has haunted it for so long. The rally in honour of Mehdi Kessaci was more than just a tribute. It was a moment of transformation for the city of Marseille. It was a moment when its people came together, united by a common cause, and it was a moment that will not soon be forgotten.